Birthdays are a natural time for us to pause, reflect on our lives, and reassess where we're headed. Well, this month I just turned 42. So today I'm going to be sharing my honest experiences and lessons I'm learning as I navigate this chapter of my life. As I've been thinking through these reflections that I wanted to share with you today, I'm reminded of just how valuable it can be to have support and guidance as you're thinking through what you want the next chapter of your life to look like. So, if you're in a space right now where you're feeling called to reassess what's going on in your life and redesign what you want your life to look like, then I want to invite you to join me for my live workshop, Your Next Chapter. In this live workshop, I'll guide you through the process of reassessing where you are right now, envisioning where you want to go, and creating a plan to get there. Head on over to onebighappylife.com/next to register and save your seat. All right, now let's dive into the insights and lessons that I've gained at 42. So, number one, I find myself really conscious of aging right now. And that's because of the things that are kind of out of my control. So, things like having gray hair or starting to get wrinkles, things like my body kind of aching and changing. And so I find myself wondering what it will feel like as I get quote unquote old and reaching a specific age physically. And this is something that I really didn't spend much of my time thinking about before I turned 40 because getting older seemed so much farther away than it seems right now because again, I'm starting to experience it because my body is changing. Now, my face actually hasn't changed that much over the past like 15 years or so. If I look at, or even 20 years, if I look at photos from me 20 years ago, I still largely look the same. And I'm actually going to lean into the camera. Like I don't have much in the way of wrinkles. I'm starting to get smile lines right here around my face, which you can see a lot more when I'm wearing makeup, which I am right now. But physically, other parts of my body have started to change. Like my joints feel so much stiffer after I play 2 hours of tennis. I actually have to put on recovery shoes. Otherwise, I'm going to be limping if I continue to wear my tennis shoes for too many hours. And obviously, this is not something that 10 years ago was ever a problem for me. And so I think about my physical health and maintaining my body a lot more than I used to. My food choices aren't just about more superficial concerns like just physically what I look like and how I fit into clothes, but also the impact that that weight has on my joints over time. If my joints are already hurting, one of the best things that I can do to preserve my joints over time is to manage my weight. So, something that used to be more about how I physically presented myself to the world, which is my weight, is now about how can I keep my joints as healthy as possible for as long as possible. Another thing is how much time, like that makes aging feel very present, is how much time I am spending now sort of managing the signs of aging. So I'm using like air quotes or catchy fingers, as Reeves likes to call them. So, for example, dyeing my hair black because I'm almost completely gray at my temples now, which sounds cool in a Doctor Strange sort of way, except the hair at my temples is actually very short. It's like the hair that's gray is like 2 or 3 inches long, which is the hair at the very like the inch around my crown. And so then it looks really strange to have like these scraggly little white hairs and then most of the rest of my hair is black. So I actually dye my hair with semi-permanent dye. It used to be every 2 weeks because I would have about a quarter inch of new shiny grays at my temples every 2 weeks. And now I found like a spray. So I actually just spray my roots once a week. Now, I am someone that really my whole life, my self-care routine, my personal care routine has been very low maintenance. So the idea of having to dye my hair every 2 weeks. And I say having because I don't have to, but choosing to, like this being a choice that I'm making now to dye my hair every 2 weeks is a real shift for me in how I'm showing up in my hair care routine, in my beauty care routine. And other things beyond that, I've started to explore cosmetic procedures. So I got Botox for the first time this year since, within the past year. And that was a really interesting experience. I don't have it right now because you can see my eyebrows moving. But thinking through, do I want to start doing that kind of procedure on a regular basis to minimize the chances of me developing wrinkles on my forehead area? It's not cheap and it's something that will go away over time. It's not permanent. So that is a big decision, a big question, a life question that I never really thought that I would be considering until now, which brings me to the question of what does aging look like for me? How do I want to age, especially given that we live in a society that really values youth above everything else. And so there is this push to push off signs of aging, this urge to do that, like internally, because I live in a society and I've absorbed the society's preferences for youth, but really fighting that and making a decision for myself about what I want my aging process to look like. When do I want to just have grays? When is that point for me? Am I willing to do cosmetic procedures, do Botox, other things like that to maintain an appearance that I prefer to have? And I don't have all of the answers to those questions. I will say the one thing that I did decide to do is laser hair removal because as I've gotten older, the little fuzzies on my chin started to turn into actually really thick hairs. And I was getting a lot of hair under my chin really these past couple of years. So I decided to go ahead and invest in laser hair removal. So I've been lasering under my chin and all of the thick hairs are gone and the fine hairs will be gone also eventually. But again, another high ticket investment into maintaining or reversing some of the signs of aging that are happening to my body. I've also been experiencing a sort of frustration that we don't really talk about aging and what does it mean to age gracefully and what does it feel like and what does it look like and what kinds of decisions do we need to make around our aging process, given the fact that like humans have been aging since forever and there are millions or billions of humans that are older than me right now, and it's just not something that is in our like dominant narrative, but yet we're constantly hearing about like, the 30 under 30s, but like, what about this natural process that all of us go through? How do we start managing this and what does it actually look like? So I've been just thinking about this. I can't say that I've come to definitive answers on many of these things, but it's certainly things that I'm starting to contemplate, especially when it comes to maintaining my health and my longevity and being able to be functional and active for as deep into my life as I possibly can. So even my physical fitness now has taken on a different purpose. It's not about vanity. It's about longevity and health and living my life as fully as I can for as long as I can by being physically active. So that's the physical and very practical side of aging. So let's just kind of get that out of the way. But now let's talk about more of the sort of mental stuff. And one thing that's really been fascinating to me is this new feeling of kind of selfishness and self-firstness that I've been experiencing. So I have been a mom basically my entire adult life. I had my daughter Alexis when I was 20 years old. She is now 22 because I am 42. And when I started out, I was poor. Yes, I was working full time, but I didn't have a college degree. So I've spent much of my life creating financial stability for myself and my family and being very self-reliant because I didn't have parents who like would take care of me and take care of everything for me. I had to figure it all out on my own. I mean, I have parents, but they're very hands off. Once you're 18, you're an adult and everything is your problem. So I've spent my whole life mothering and being a mom and being that first. And everything that I did was from the lens of, well, I've got to provide. I've got to show up for her. I've got to be the best mom I can be. So I haven't had that experience of being a single person, being selfish and only kind of thinking about what I wanted to do. And I am now, interestingly enough, at a stage in my life where I'm able to do that more. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, it's because, well, Alexis is an adult now. And yes, I have an 8-year-old, but I also have an incredibly responsible partner, Joseph. And so everything hasn't been on my shoulders for a long time. We are very egalitarian in our house. We share all of the responsibilities equally. But I think for a long time, there was like a lag in the reality I was experiencing versus what I felt I was able to do in my mind. And I would stop myself from doing this or that thing because, well, I need to be there for the kids. I need to be there for the family, and their needs come first. And I finally reached this point where I'm able to be like selfish and say, I want to take a bath. You guys go do something. Or I'm going to go hang out with friends. You guys go do something. And I don't need to figure out what that something is. And I can just decide this is what I want to do and take time for me. And that's been really liberating, like enjoying doing things just for me because I like it and because I want to do it. And part of what has spurred that is the amount of tennis I've played. So I picked up this hobby over the past year, playing tennis, and I don't always play tennis with my family. Sometimes I go out with my girlfriends and we play tennis together. And my tennis friends and I will go out and we'll have brunch. And I just haven't had that kind of experience where I had something that was so separate from my family on such a regular basis, really in my entire life. Because the last time I would say that I had something really separate was law school, where I had to pour a lot of attention into law school. But I always felt torn between the time that I was spending it working in law school, right? Working on my schoolwork, and the time that I was taking away from my family. And so for the first time ever, I feel like some of my time is my time. And it's a strange thing to have suddenly found myself in this place. And I can't say that I intentionally sought it out, but now that I'm here, it feels really good. It felt uncomfortable at first, but it feels really good right now. So I'm leaning into this feeling of putting myself first and that being okay. Another thing, and I've talked about this a little bit, is the joy of having an adult child. So Alexis is 22 years old, and now I'm getting to experience the parent-child relationship from the perspective of the parent-adult child. So in some ways, I am still parenting in that. I'm still guiding. I'm still offering Alexis my life wisdom. But at the end of the day, it is optional. She makes her own decisions. And so that's a really fascinating thing to learn how to release control and let go and let her live her own life. But and to watch her have her own life and her own life experiences. But the joy is the friendship that she and I have. I mean, we are really just wonderful friends. We go out, we do things together. And I've never really had that experience because that was not my relationship with my mother. It is a relationship that I've always wanted and I've tried really hard to cultivate with my daughter when she was a child. So I'm glad that it has turned out to be that way now that she's an adult. And it's so wonderful to have her in my life as an adult. And just to give an example, so for my birthday, Alexis actually planned, like with Joseph, but I think she was the ringleader in this, several surprises for me and also for Joseph. So she contacted some of my best friends from law school and asked them to fly out and spend my birthday weekend with me. And so it was a complete surprise. Joseph knew, but she picked them up and I woke up and they were here and it was amazing. We had a wonderful time doing absolutely nothing, which is what I asked for my birthday. I just wanted to lounge around the house, play board games, hang out together as a family. And we did, and it was wonderful. And then she surprised Joseph and I later that weekend with a tennis social with 12 of our really good friends. And we had no idea that it was happening. She planned it all. She got everyone's phone numbers, booked all the courts, the tennis courts, got everyone together, and we had a wonderful time. So we played 2 hours of tennis in 90-degree heat, which, if any of our friends are watching this, we love you for being willing to play outside under those conditions. And then we all went out to dinner together afterwards. And it was so beautiful. And it was amazing to have someone else do that for the both of us. Because typically, for something like that to happen, Joseph needs to do the work or I need to do the work. And now we have this other adult in our lives that's so close to us, that cares about us so much, that they would plan these elaborate things for both of us. And that is such a blessing that I didn't even know to really look forward to in having a child. So that has been a gift. So that's one of my joys of 42. Now let's talk about something challenging, which is starting to accept that there are some parts of my life that don't look the way that I want it to, and that they never will. I think that we don't hear enough about the disappointments in life. We always see these stories where people try and they try so hard and they try their best and they try long enough that they accomplish it. But though that's not always the case, In fact, for every person that reaches the highest thing, like the highest level of accomplishment, there are so many that weren't able to achieve that milestone, especially when we're talking situations where there can only be one winner. But of course, we're talking about my personal life here. And so that's not the case. But I just think that it's so important that we acknowledge that there's more to life than just the winning and the accomplishment. There's also a lot of disappointment, we are all going to experience things where we try for something and we never, ever get it. Right? And that's not necessarily a sad thing. It's part of life. And it's in the trying that we experienced the life that we wanted to have, right? Because we went after the things that we really wanted to have. So I'm going to get very specific about what I mean. So one of the things that I'm still coming to terms with that might be a little bit hard for me to talk about, but I've accepted it, but it's still challenging to acknowledge it, is that I won't have any more biological children. So Joseph and I started trying to have children when I was 30 years old. I'm 42 now. We have one, which is Reeves, and we were very lucky to have him. And we tried everything, all sorts of medical interventions, and we were not able to have children that way. And even after we decided to stop IVF, we continued trying to have children naturally. And it's only over this past year that we finally turned to each other and said, do we still want to keep trying or are we done? And the answer we both decided was that we were done. not because we stopped wanting to have children, but based on what we wanted the rest of our lives to look like. Like when we wanted to be done rearing children, we're actually starting to get, from our perspectives, from what we wanted, a little too old, right? Like the idea of starting from scratch right now and raising children until I'm 60, having started when I was 20, I'm like, no, I think this is it. But would I have liked, I would have loved to have like one or two more children. Two would have been lovely. And so I'm coming to terms with, like, I've accepted it, but it still comes with a sadness too. And sometimes life is like that. And there are other things too, right? Not just, that's not the only thing. There are other things too, like my relationship with my family that I birthed from. We've never been close. I've always wanted us to be closer, but I'm coming to terms with the fact that I think this is what it's going to be for the rest of my life. And maybe it'll change. And I think that's one of those things that I can continue to hope to change, because the door has not shut on that yet. But at this point, I've also come to accept the fact that it may never change. And it used to upset me. But now I've come to accept it, and I'm more okay with it. And I think that that is a gift, right? It's, on one hand, it's painful to acknowledge that, hey, this is probably not going to happen for me. But on the other hand, it's liberating in all things, because you can kind of put that thing down. You can release it over time, and it opens up space for other things. Like, I am really excited for what life is going to look like when I'm done raising kids, when I just have adult children. I'm excited for the potential for grandkids. I'm also excited for it to be just me and Joseph, right? I've never had that experience. Again, I've always been raising children. So there's so much to look forward to. There's so much that opens up, so many possibilities that open up, right? It's like when one door closes, another door opens, that cliche. But these things really start to come to a head, I think. I have, at least for me right now, as I've been in my 40s. Now, having said that, right, doors are closing, but I also feel like I'm just beginning in so many ways. I'm just coming into who I am as a person, who I'm becoming. There's still so much possibility available to me in life because of everything that I've learned along the way, all the skills that I've picked up, who I am right now. And again, because we live in a society where it's like your life ends after your 20s, it's surprising to me to now be 42 and feel like I'm even better than I was when I was 20 or when I was 30. And that this is just the beginning of what I'm going to experience in my life, and that anything is possible, right? Obviously, not everything is possible, but there are so few roads that are actually closed off to me at this stage in my life, especially roads that I also still want to explore. And that has been just incredible. This feeling of I can do whatever I want with the rest of my life. There is nothing that, if I decide I want to do it, that I can't have it. And that I am enjoying being me in my life. The older I get, the more comfortable I get with myself and who I am, the less I care about what other people think, the less I just accept societal rules, the more I want to push boundaries, and the more me I become. Now, that can only happen though because I make an effort to consciously design myself and my life. And that's not to say that my life wasn't good enough or that we need to always be on this quest for self improvement. But what I am doing is regularly asking myself, what do I actually want? What do I want? What does a fulfilling life look like for me? And because I'm regularly asking myself that question, I get to make decisions that align with that. I keep doors open. I don't say I'm too old for this or I can't do that. If I'm not going to do it, it's because I don't want it anymore. Even if I felt like I was too old for something. Like, so for example, to go back to having more children, I don't want to have biological children at this point anymore. But I also, if I wanted children, and Joseph and I have talked about this, adoption is always an option, especially we would want to adopt an older child. If that is something we really wanted to do, if we wanted to grow our family, we could still do it. We're just not going to have biological children anymore. And I don't know that adoption is something that we're going to pursue, but it's definitely something that we've talked about. So I share that example just to say that even though, yes, some doors are closed, the outcome isn't necessarily also closed, right? There can be a different path to get to that same outcome if it's something that we really, really wanted to do, if we decided it was something that we really wanted to do. So I say all this to say that honestly, I am loving my 40s. It is challenging, right? Because it's definitely given me a new perspective. It's making me question everything. I've definitely had my sort of reawakening, reinvention moment. And I'm sure it's not the last one that I'm going to have in my life, but I love how I'm navigating it. I love how I'm coming through it. And I love the vision that I have for my life going forward. And so, if that is you, if you feel called, if you have the question, what is next for me? What do I want to do with my life? How do I intentionally create the life that I want? What do I value? What do I want my life to look like? Then you have to join me for the Your Next Chapter live workshop. We're going to be doing this work together. This is the work of a lifetime. It's not a one and done kind of thing. It's something that we do over and over and over. And I would love to guide you through that process. So head on over to onebighappylife.com/next, save your seat, join me live, and I will see you next time.